Hi, I'm Nick Vitellari, and I'm here at the Road to Reinvention 2018 conference. And I have Kiva Allgood, who is the Chief Commercial Development Officer at GE, Business Innovations Division. And we're going to talk a little bit about leadership in this digital era. Kiva, great to have you here with us today. A real pleasure.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Awesome to be here.
So, this whole issue of leadership, and you've had an interesting experience recently, I'm sure, with all the stuff going on at GE. But really the broader question is, we're in this digital era. There's a lot of disruption. So how do you think about leadership? What are the issues, key issues?
Yeah, I think leadership is a very broad term.
True.
And I think you lead an organization through transition differently depending upon where you're headed. And at GE, obviously, we're 126 years old. And if you think about who's really being rewarded in the stock market, it's not companies that are 126 years old.
True.
So we're constantly having to really figure out, how do we industrialize innovation? The reality is, GDP is driven by access to electricity. GE powers 30% of the world, access to water, and access to connectivity, all things that we think are essential. So we really try to break the mold around leadership in each of those different areas, but what we're constantly doing is really looking out at the entrepreneurial ecosystem. There isn't an industry or place that we are today or products that we have that couldn't potentially be disrupted by change. If you think about how medical services are going to be provided in the future, people may not be going into hospitals. Same thing, if you think about transportation and aircraft, if we can get to a point where you now have a $15,000 Uber plane in places in emerging markets where there are no roads, that's going to be how people get around. So really trying to make sure that we have people within our organization that are thinking that way, that are constantly challenging themselves around what if, and then how do we industrialize it? For us, products don't change every 18 months. A jet engine's up there running for hopefully 30, 40 years with good maintenance, and same thing with turbines. So we have to make sure, though, that the products that we're bringing to market are really industrialized and making sure that it's something that can be there forever.
That's interesting because, the thing is with a lot of companies is that they have these significant change requirements. And GE is stellar in the sense that, it's quite an accomplishment to be over 100 years old,
Yeah.
right? So if there was one thing, though, that you could share with other leaders about leading in this sort of hyper-disruptive digital era, what would it be?
It's the same thing that I think of when we're hiring a new CEO for a startup, is empathy. And when you have empathy, you stay close to the customer, you listen well, you really try and understand what's the problem that you're trying to solve, and then you become laser focused on it, and you have the ability to know if someone's not really going to be able to get it, and then being able to call that early, and do them the favor of saying, maybe this isn't the right cultural fit. So I think that element of empathy, again, a word like leadership that gets defined a lot of different ways, but in my mind, in times of pure disruption and innovation, you can't really open up your heart or your mind to a new idea if you can't have empathy for either the problem you're trying to solve or the people that are on your team.
Wow, that's great. That is very powerful. I really like that. So Kiva, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. Appreciate it.
Oh, you bet.
So that's Kiva Allgood, who is with GE, and thank you for your attention today.